Hi, welcome to Wealthy Boss. My name is Mariah, and today I have a special sequence planned that uses both yoga and Pilates specifically to relieve lower back pain. Now, it's a little bit selfish on my part maybe to choose this topic, as I've actually been struggling a little bit in this area myself. So hopefully that translates because my mind is fresh on what tends to help for low back pain. I know that will translate into helping you get a better, more relief-filled practice today. Now, one quick word, this routine is specifically designed for general back pain, so achiness, stiffness, but is not necessarily appropriate for those with really acute conditions like stenosis or osteoporosis, lumbar disc fusions. Those are really better served with a more specific protocol than some of the exercises we'll be doing today. So if you'd like me to do a separate flow created around one of those conditions, please let me know in the comments below. Otherwise, for general achiness, stiffness, too much sitting, too much driving, then this will definitely help you feel better in no time. So let's get started, shall we?
We'll begin standing at the top of our mat and come into a cat-cow position from a standing starting point. So with every inhale, we think about arching our back, lifting the chest up to the sky, and taking your gaze with it. As you exhale, we'll just move the spine in the opposite direction, rounding forward, imagining you're hugging a big beach ball, and then inhale, reverse, exhale, round. Keep going at your own pace. We're just creating a little bit of mobility between each vertebrae. Maybe with each inhale and exhale, you find that you can arch a little further or round a little bit deeper. And then let's return to standing upright. From here, we're going to move into standing spine twist. So taking the arms out shoulder width distance apart, relax the shoulders away from the ears, grow really tall in the spine. Inhale, and then exhale, keeping your hip bones pointing forward. I'd like you to twist your heart over to the left. Inhale, back to center. Exhale and twist. So the trick to this move, it's a very simple move, but it's a subtle one. Good, let's keep going. Is you really want to think about squaring those hips forward. So your belly button is facing forward the entire time. You're really only twisting from the ribs up. Good. So this is actually getting a little bit of oblique work as well. You're doing it correctly. So really be mindful about squaring those hips off, rotating from the ribs. Let's do one more in each direction. Make sure you're balanced on each side. Awesome. And now we're just going to bend into the knees as much as you need. The tighter you're feeling, the deeper you'll bend your knees. So you reach forward and just kind of let the upper body hang. So your chest is resting on the thighs. Again, you're bending as much as you need to. And from here, we're just going to start to gently sway back and forth, dragging fingertips along the ground. This is decompressing the spine, allowing gravity to create more space between each vertebrae, which is awesome because they tend to get compacted as we sit and stand throughout the day. If you'd like a little more, go ahead and reach for opposite elbows. This will add just a little bit more gravitational pull to create even more space between those vertebrae. Good. Now come to center, and keeping your knees bent initially, I'd like you to now draw your belly button in really, really far in towards your spine. So before we were allowing the chest to just kind of rest on the thighs, now we're starting to work the belly away from the thighs as we gently roll up one vertebra at a time. So this is a very active pose when it comes to your core. And keep going, ribs over hips. Head is the last thing to come. Let's take those arms and inhale overhead. And then exhale, bend into the knees again. And we're just going to repeat that whole series. This time, if you want to go ahead and go right into ragdoll, holding on to opposite elbows. And maybe it feels good to sway back and forth, or maybe you just prefer to stay centered with the torso, but maybe you shake your head yes and no. Also getting a little bonus release in the cervical spine around the neck. And then when you're ready, belly button hugs inward as we take that. Roll down. Head is the last thing to come up. Inhale, sweep arms overhead. And we'll do that one more time. So bending as deeply as you need into the legs. By now you might feel that you want to bring them a little bit straighter for more intensity. And again, either swaying side to side, maybe finding that ragdoll shape, or just asking your back what feels best. So many of these poses are just a matter of listening to your body and seeing what feels good. Lots of different things can contribute to lower back pain. There's no, one reason for it. There's multiple reasons. So certain poses may be just the thing that you need. Good. So let's start that roll down now. So we'll pull our belly in as we stack one bone at a time, just like building blocks. Head comes up, sweep arms overhead. And now let's step nice and wide into our wide leg goddess, or in bar we might call this a plie. So toes are a little bit wider than the heels, making sure that we've stepped wide enough that our knees are not over our toes. And then from there, I'd like to have you take your hands to the inside of your thighs. Now you can play with the positioning, whether you want to have your fingertips facing forward or back. And then I'd like you to straighten one arm away from you as you lean into one side. So this is an amazing shoulder stretch, but it's also creating some tractioning in the low back by pressing the thigh bones away from you. You're creating more space along the pelvis and the base of the spine. This just feels yummy. And now let's take it over to the other side. Good, dipping shoulder down low to create more opening. Awesome. Now, if you're not already at the top of your mat, I'd like you to come up to standing and just move to the top of your mat. We're going to step back into a downward facing dog. So we're forming upside down letter V with our body. Legs are straight. Heels may or may not touch, but we're thinking about sending the heels as close as they'll go towards the ground. Maybe taking a moment here to just find some small movements. And then shifting the weight into the left leg, let's lift the right leg. So initially, let's just keep the hips squared. And now let's stack those hips open and bend into that right knee. So you can almost take a peek under your arm and see that toe. So really good opening here. Opening into the pelvis and hips, which can create tension in the spine if those are tight. Bring the muscles around them. And maybe even start to take a few circles with the knees, so drawing big circles, working some circumduction of the hips, loosening any stiffness or stuck energy. And let's square those hips up now, facing the belly button faces the mat once again. And then rock your weight forward into a three-legged plank. And we're just going to take that right leg and take it down all the way onto the mat. Now, depending on how tight your low back is, this could feel way too intense. So if that's the case, then I would suggest taking a pillow or a yoga block underneath that right hip. That's really going to take a lot of the pressure off so that you can enjoy this. You do want it to feel nice. Sliding forward. You can come onto elbows or you can come all the way down if you're feeling like that's a good idea. A good kind of indicator of this is noticing what's happening in your face. If you feel yourself like clenching your jaw or scrunching up your forehead, you may be going a little bit too deep into the pose than your body is asking for. If that's the case, just kind of ease up a little bit. Chances are if you relax into it, your body will invite you to go further in a few moments anyway. So connecting with some deep breaths here, finding some focus. Although this isn't exactly comfortable, we do want it to be in a place where we can find a sense of release. Just recognizing that the discomfort comes from the imbalance in our bodies being tight and stiff. And so the fact that we're doing something about it, giving it what it needs, is definitely something to feel good about. Now, if you are all the way down on the ground, start to work up onto those elbows and then press yourself up onto straight arms. From here, we're going to do a little bit of a unwrapping here. We're going to slide over onto that right hip as we wrap that back leg around now. So left leg crosses over the right into a seated twist. Now, if this feels uncomfortable, no worries. You're just going to straighten out the right leg underneath, and that should make it feel much more accessible if you need. Okay, from there, we're thinking about lifting up, up, up. Take that back arm behind you. Left arm wraps either in front of the shin, or for a little bit more, you could take that elbow in front of the knee. And take a nice deep twist with your exhale. So every inhale, you'll think about getting a little bit longer. Every exhale, think about growing a little bit more towards the back of the room. And I really straighten the elbow behind me, and I keep my hand kind of right behind my low back. This serves as a little bit of a prop for me to kind of post myself up and ensure that I have really good posture here, get the most out of the pose. Breathing deeply. Let's take one more round of breath here, infusing the body with oxygen, healing the body, healing the low back. Good. And then just go ahead and come back up to seated. So let's cross those legs and then just step back into plank position. We're going to find down dog on the other side. So taking again a few moments here. You probably find that your heels are a little bit closer to the ground now since we've been here before. And now it's the left leg that comes up. Just squaring those hips up initially to feel a nice stretch into the right hamstring and calf. And then let's open up the hip by bending into that left knee, maybe taking a peek into the opposite arm. This should feel so nice. Drawing big circles in one direction with the knee. And then in the other direction. Good. Squaring those hips off again. We're going to rock forward into a three-legged plank and then bend into that left knee, place the shin on the ground, back leg comes long, back of the foot comes long on the right leg. And then we start to melt forward as much or as little as our body tells us to go. If you notice one side is really a different experience than the other, of course this one might feel a little bit stiffer compared to the end of the other side since we are just starting out on this side. But if you notice a significant difference from one side to the other, that might be some kind of clue into the body mechanics that you kind of participate in on a daily basis. You know, what is it about your environment? Are you sitting cross-legged with one leg crossed and the other not? Are you leaning a certain way in your chair? Just all cues to pay attention to as you notice what's going on in your body. Thinking about squaring those hips off. Again, a cushion or a blanket or even a yoga block underneath that hip is a great idea if you feel like it's hard to get your hips squared. Or if you feel like you're having to grip and really hold on to the muscles. We want to feel like we can mostly relax, at least relax the compensatory muscles in the rest of the body. Good. Starting to work your way back up right now with the torso. We're going to lean back onto that hip, wrap the right leg around and either cross it Or if that's too intense, then that bottom shin can come long. So find your perfect situation here. That back arm comes behind you to post yourself up. Your inhale, you're really going to lift, 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 and then exhale, find your twist. Good. Pressing that air into the ribs. Let's take one more final round of breath here. And just slowly unwrap yourself. From here, moving both legs straight forward. You might want to scoot back a little bit on your mat if you need to. We're moving into our Pilates roll-up. Now, these can be pretty intense, so it's rare. If this is the first time that you've ever done it, I would not necessarily expect you to complete a full roll-up by yourself. So I'm going to show you what the full thing looks like, and then if that's not available to you, I'm going to show you some things to work up to it. So from our seated position, legs are long. We want to think about keeping the legs anchored to the ground at all times. So that's the primary goal here, along with moving in really slow motion, not utilizing momentum. Now from there, we want to think about drawing the belly button in. So we're creating a C curve in the spine. And right about that time that the belly wants to pop up, you want to think about pulling it in. It's kind of a little counterintuitive, but we want to engage the transverse abdominis, the deep core muscles underneath the rectus abdominis, which are the ones that we tend to puff up here until we're all the way down. See if you can make that really smooth, or that's the goal. So that would be half of our roll up, and then the other portion of a roll up, not surprisingly, would be to roll back up. So we think to take a nice deep inhale, and then exhale, maybe exhaling through the mouth, through pursed lips. We think about drawing belly in. It wants to push up. Think about pulling in. So belly pulls. Whew, those are tough. So as I mentioned, it would be really rare if this were the first time that you'd ever done it, or even the 10th time necessarily that you had done it, that you could necessarily get into this full thing and not have to rely on momentum or kind of dropping down to the ground. So a couple ways that you can work on this is you can just practice one half at a time. So you can start by practicing from the top down, rolling down, and then right at that point where you feel like you would no longer have control, just pull right back up. And then from there, you could practice that a few times and then lay all the way down and work on your roll up and then come back down. So those are options. So I'm going to roll all the way back up. And as we work on our roll up, if you care to practice the top half and then the bottom half, I'll give you that kind of halfway heads up when you want to move from practicing on the top half to moving to the bottom half. If you are taking the full roll up, then think about pulling the belly in, making it silky smooth. Legs stay on the mat, remember, don't forget that. Utilizing your breath, focused work here. This is so good for you. We're strengthening the abdominals. We're creating mobility and movement between each of the vertebrae. Loosening stuck energy and congestion. Okay, so if you were practicing the top half of your roll-up, go ahead and come all the way down onto your back, and you could go ahead and start practicing the bottom half. We're about halfway through. Use your breath here. This is a Pilates move, so you might consider Pilates breath, which is inhaling through the nose, exhaling through pursed lips, like this. And the deeper you engage your breath, the deeper you breathe, the more you're actually working into your abdominal muscles. So this is, of course, an abdominal exercise, surprise, surprise, which can actually alleviate back pain by either strengthening or just simply working the musculature around the spine and abdominals can really help to alleviate back pain. Good, last one here. Ooh la la, so good. Let's just undo any tension that we had from all that contraction now by opening into the low back. So I'm just going to have you roll over onto your belly. For just 1 second here, press up into an upward facing dog. So you can either have your thighs on the ground, or if it's comfortable for you, you can straighten into your arms. This can be too intense though if you're, depending on how bad your back pain is feeling. So if that's the case, just keep the legs on the ground, hips on the ground, and a little soft bend into the elbows. Come into more of a cobra. Nice. From here, let's press back into a brief child's pose. Good. And then from here, you're going to come up to seated and come all the way onto your back. So from here, we're going to come into a pose as if we were coming into a bridge pose, but we're not going to just yet. We want to think about having the feet hip width distance apart, knees are bent, soles of the feet are on the ground. And this is a very, very subtle movement that we're doing next. And it's one of the best things I think that you can do to help relieve low back pain. And it's also one of the things that you can do on a day-to-day basis just to protect your back from getting too stiff or stuck. I actually do this seated upright when I'm driving. I do long trips to back and forth from California and Arizona because I have a place in each state. And I'll do this when I'm driving. So we think about inhale and flatten your back completely onto the ground. So pulling belly in, you're going to place the low back, really press it down into the ground. And then exhale, without lifting your hips, I'd like you to think about tilting your pelvis forward, sending your belly button more towards your feet, and lifting in the arch of your back. So again, hips stay heavy. We are not moving into a bridge right now. And then take it in the opposite direction. So inhale, you're gonna, what I call lower the bridge. So you're gonna think about not having any space at all underneath that back. And then exhale, exaggerate the arch underneath your back. So again, finding some just mobility in the low back. Oftentimes that uncomfortable feeling we may feel in our low back can just be a result of being stuck in one position too long. So this is a great thing to do, if you're seated at your desk, you could even try this. But on the ground, I feel like you really can get the most sensation out of it. Good. Let's come to neutral. And this next one, listen really closely. You may not even be able to see in the video the difference here. So I want you to really listen. I want you to think about keeping both of your hips on the ground and then just kind of from a neutral spine. So you're not working to either flatten or exaggerate the arch. It's just a neutral spine. I want you to think about rotating your right hip closer to your right heel, but both hips stay on the ground. So you just don't want to imagine like a steering wheel, just kind of rotating. So it's not a lift, it's just a slide down. And then we'll take that opposite hip down. So right hip now draws up closer to the ribs, left hip closer to the feet. So you're just lengthening into the side body here. Oftentimes the fascial tissue over the iliac crest, the hip bones on either side of your side of the body can become tight, and that can create some back pain. I know for myself, this is a big culprit for my lower back pain. And switching side to side. Checking in with that breath again. Make sure you're breathing deeply and purposefully. Imagining that breath going into that pelvic area, flooding the low back, the vertebrae, the discs between the vertebrae. Good. And we're just going to take 3 very simple bridges, not very long. We won't spend much time in here. But engaging the erector muscles in the low back can feel really nice if you've been kind of stuck in a forward position all day. I find that some simple back extension really makes me feel good if I'm struggling with low back pain. So just hips lifted to the sky. You don't have to worry so high about how high you get them so much today. This workout is all about making your back feel in tip-top shape, less so about, really muscling up or maximizing your limits here. This is just about making yourself feel good so that you can stay in tip-top shape to keep doing those harder workouts. Good, let's do one more. Good, coming back down now to that original starting point. Think about pressing your hands, or if you wanted a little bit more, you could even take your fists and just pressing them straight into your hip crease, so right where the upper thighs join the pelvis area. And just think about pressing, lengthening your arms and pressing the thighs away from you. It's creating a little bit more traction in the spine. Breathing into it. Imagining your spine growing longer, stronger, more supple. And release out of that. From here, we're going to start doing one of my favorite Pilates exercises, which is rolling like a ball. And yes, this does have benefits for your back, but it's also super fun. So we're going to think about drawing your shins in really tight and then finding a C curve in the spine. So the more that you C curve, the more that you draw the belly in, the smoother this will be. It should feel like a nice little massage to your back. And then you're just going to find a little bit of, this is the one place where you can use a little bit of momentum. Roll up, balance on those sits bones, and then find your way back. So the true test to see if you're really doing this like in the most effective capacity is you want it to be really quiet. Mine is not always very quiet, but the quieter you are, that means the more you're pulling your belly in so that there's a really smooth circumference of the back. So the abdominals are more engaged. Good, let's do one more. And let's just cross those legs. We're gonna come to an all fours position. So from here, stacking hands right underneath shoulders, knees right underneath hips. I'd like you to take the right fingertips forward, left leg back, and we're gonna flex the heel of that back leg. We're just gonna hold here, nice isometric toning, working the mid back muscles, the low back muscles, glutes, all the muscles engaged that surround the core area. Help to support it, keep it even and healthy. Make sure you're still breathing, and then release that. We'll take the other side. Good, let's take that 2 more times on each side. So switching right arms, left leg, right arm I should say. You only have one right arm, I think, probably. And then take the other side. Back of the neck is long. Make sure you're not craning up to look at me right now. You're just staying in place. And we'll take our final round on each side. Switching if you haven't already. Breathing deeply, drawing belly away from the ground. Good, coming back to all four. Moving to thread the needle. So inhale, right fingertips up to the sky. Exhale, you're going to take that long arm and shoulder all the way down to the ground. Hips are going to stay high here. Now, this is a great upper back stretch, upper kind of shoulder rhomboid area stretch, but to really create the low back benefit that we want, we really want to think about twisting the hips back towards the center. So notice how they probably kind of just leaned over to one side. See if you can straighten those hips back towards center. And to do that, I like to take this top arm, spread my fingers really wide, and then I bend into the elbow so that the elbow is right over my wrist. So I form a 90-degree angle between the forearm and the elbow. And then I use that hand to press the floor away from me. That's going to give me an even deeper rotation here, which should feel really good. So a little bit more of a focus in this stretch on the low back. Sometimes we do this more for the upper back. We're thinking about that beautiful rotation. Good. Let's unwind that bottom arm, place that hand back underneath the shoulder, and we'll take it over to the other side. Left fingertips up on the inhale. Exhale, thread it through. Use that hand to really press into the ground. Elbow comes straight up for leverage, and then send those hips back towards center. Breathing deeply here. It might feel a little bit funny to get a full breath here just because the ribs kind of constrict the breathing a little bit. But just think of that in terms of sending oxygen to those tight places that don't normally get their fair share. Take 2 more breaths here. Awesome. From here, we're going to rock ourselves forward so that we come all the way down onto the mat. So chest is on the mat. If you need to wiggle your way back in order to make sure you still have some mat left, feel free. From here, we're moving into Swan Pose from Pilates. Sometimes Pilates and yoga have same names for different exercises, so we just want to make that clear. From our elbows now are going to come a little bit wider than the shoulders, so you could even think about taking them off the sides of the mat and then a little bit further forward of the shoulders. So they're definitely not underneath the shoulders, a little bit wider. The further wide and the further forward that you have, the more gentle this is going to be. So from there, you're going to take a nice inhale, and then on an exhale, you're going to lift the chest, lifting the gaze, using primarily the strength of the mid-back muscles. So the arms are just kind of helping support you. And then inhale, release chest back down, forehead to mat. Exhale and lift, pressing hip bones and thighs into the ground. Inhale and lower. We'll do that one more time. Exhale, lift. Inhale, lower. And now we move into a fun one called swimming. So this is also a Pilates exercise. So keeping the back of the neck nice and long, your gaze is straight down at your mat. Just like we did in spinal balance where we lifted opposite arm and leg, we're gonna do that, but we're just gonna alternate like we were swimming. So as your right arm is down, your left leg is up and vice versa, and we just alternate. Swimming, swimming, swimming. Have some fun with this. Imagine yourself paddling around a little pool or the ocean. Imagine how good your back feels in that environment. Make sure you're breathing. Awesome. From here, we're going to move into a puppy pose from yoga. So this is similar to a child's pose, except your hips stay really high. So the hips are actually above the knees as you take that chest all the way down to the ground. Reach those fingertips forward. Now, you do want to pull in the belly just a little bit. This is mostly a passive pose, but you do want to take care not to overarch in the spine. So just a little bit of pulling in with the belly button, not a super tight, like sucking in, but just a little bit of strength here in the belly to keep more of a little bit straighter of a spine here. And then send those hips back, take the knees wide. Our final resting pose here. Let's take our child's pose. So hopefully your back is feeling a little bit more open by now. If it's still feeling quite tight, you can keep the knees together. If this is, a rougher day for you, then the knees together could feel just a little less intense. But if it feels okay, it could feel really nice to have the knees wide here. Imagine every muscle relaxing now. Imagine all the tissues around the spine softening, opening up. I'm going to stay here a little bit longer, really maximize this pose. And then stay here if you'd like, or you can join me in pressing yourself up into a seated position. Thank you so much for investing this time into yourself. Our backs are so integral to how we live and move and do really everything in life. So you are so wise to invest time into its care. I'm hoping you feel a little bit better than when you started this practice. Don't forget to subscribe for more workouts so that you can keep feeling amazing, keep moving your body, and make sure that it stays strong and healthy for all of those things that are important to you. Namaste.